I was wondering whether to do this talk in English or in Russian, but then I was like, we're talking about internationalization strategies, right? Internationalization means, first and foremost, going to a foreign country. And I know that Moldova is surrounded by Ukraine and Romania. That for many of you guys, those languages are not really foreign, but it's all about getting out of the comfort zone, right, when you're going abroad. So I'm going to do it in English. I'll probably use some Russian words every now and then that are maybe not so easy to translate for our friends in the back. Let's see how far we get with that. So for those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Max. I was born in Moscow. I grew up in the United States and in Holland, where I've lived very many years. 2008, I founded an online legal services company called Regeldit.nl, for those of you who know how to speak Dutch. Kind of an accidental business, just me and my friend fooling around. It became a relatively large online law firm on the Dutch market based in Amsterdam. In 2011, that company got acquired. I moved to Bulgaria, where I started helping startups, getting involved with building up a community of online businesses that were just emerging in Eastern Europe, in Bulgaria at the time. Founded a seed fund for investments and an accelerator program for technology startup companies called 11. Did a couple of angel investments with a couple of friends, and most recently last year, Vitaly and I founded a new firm called CCC Startups, where we try to validate the most interesting startups from Eastern Europe and Middle East and help them with advice, mentorship, investments. We're working on launching an investment fund for these companies, helping them to get to global markets, right? So what we're going to be talking about today is very much on that topic. How do you go to a foreign market as a small, medium-sized business from a place like Moldova? Now, first of all, what is internationalization, right? I try to look it up. What is the real meaning of the term? It appears that there isn't actually a clear definition. There is a number of strategies, a number of best practices on going abroad, but internationalization basically means taking business to a foreign country. That's the general meaning of it. Usually when we talk about internationalization, we mean one of the next 6 things. One of them is, and the simplest form is export, right? So you guys are based in Moldova, and you're trying to bring your product or service to a market outside Moldova. It's the usual export. You have to, either have a sales representative there, or if it's a physical product, you have to ship it across the border. You have customs formalities, etc. That's the most easy form. The other thing is turnkey. I know that already Iraklis mentioned this in his talk before me. Turnkey is, in Russian, it's called под ключ. It basically means, usually it means buying an existing business and using that for serving customers in the country. Moldova actually has a lot of those examples. A lot of the large industrial facilities, complexes in Moldova have been bought by foreign companies, like this one, which is the Moldova steel mill, the one you see on the photo. Licensing is another one. This is one that you know very probably well from Lada cars, right? There were an Italian technology which was licensed by the Soviet Union. Some will say stolen, but that's a different discussion. And if you remember, I remember that in the late 80s, maybe some of you guys remember, you still had Lada cars with Italian parts, right? And those were always considered much better than the ones with Russian parts only, right? So this was, the whole Lada factory was an Italian technology, an Italian car design, technological design, which was taken and copied in Russia, right? So this was a licensing operation. And in many technical solutions and many technical products, this is a way to go into a new market, right? You take one technology from one country and you start producing it under a license in a foreign country. Franchising is another form of internationalization. Very well known as McDonald's, right? McDonald's restaurants are almost never owned by McDonald's. They're always owned by a local company that takes a franchise. It's basically a whole set of rules. Your restaurant has to look like this. You have to put a logo like that. The price is like this, and you operate it for your own account locally. You just pay a pretty large franchising fee for the brand, for the content of the product. And finally, I think this is the last one, no, one before last, the joint venture, the совместное предприятие, as it's called in Russian. I have a feeling that my mic will, the batteries will run out. So if you guys maybe have another microphone. Батарейки здесь, да? Okay. Probably change them once it really stops. So a joint venture is where basically when two businesses from different countries create a new subsidiary. This is something you see also a lot in. This is something you see a lot in heavy mechanical products as well, right? So BMW is a very good example. In Russia, for instance, this is better, yeah? Okay. Yeah. Okay, this works. So BMW is a good example because in Russia, if you import a car, you have to pay a lot of tax. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. So they opened a factory. I don't know if this works. They opened a factory in Kaliningrad, which, basically produces the same cars. It just assembles them. But because they're actually assembled in Russia, you don't have to pay tax. So for some things, usually more complicated things, usually on more restricted, closed markets, joint ventures are a good thing. And finally, a wholly owned subsidiary. So it's a company that is fully owned by a foreign entity. Is the sixth and last form. IKEA is a very good example. IKEA stores are almost always actually, unlike McDonald's, owned by IKEA. There are a couple of exceptions in some countries where foreign ownership is taxed. But usually when you see an IKEA store, it's a Swedish company that goes in and does a greenfield investment in a new country. And they bring even their own materials, their own processes. They don't even depend on local contractors when they do this. So this is all theory, but what it all means in practice is, of course, that internationalization is about doing business in a foreign country, the ability to communicate, the ability to sell, the ability to get money out of people that are in a different country, live under different rules, speak a different language, right? So it doesn't matter how big or how small your business is, there's a certain set of skills, best practices that you have to follow if you want to take your business abroad. And in a small country like Moldova, this is pretty important because your market is small. We've discussed this already today and yesterday. You have, the brain flights, right? Smart people are leaving. Qualified workforce is hard to get, so you need actually to go to other markets to increase your revenues, increase your profits. So what does that mean? Interesting thing about going international, about starting to communicate and to do business with foreign countries, is that you have to deal with a lot of distances, differences, very often differences in perception. This is a series of advertisements that was very successful. They won a lot of advertising prizes. Started in their mid-90s and they're still running today. It's a very large British Chinese bank, HSBC. And they have all these commercials that they have at airports or in magazines where they show how different perceptions of things are. And that, they're trying to show that as a bank, they're helping people bridge those differences, right? So when you see a cow, in some countries people will think about leather, right? In some other countries people think about meat, right? Food. In India, a cow is holy, right? So people don't eat cows and don't make shoes out of cows. But in the end, it's the same product, right? So that's one of those hard things about going international. Even in Europe, the differences in perception between markets, between countries are pretty big. Now, the number one rule, that's where it all starts. When you go to a foreign market, is that you have to be as good as the locals and better, right? That's the hard thing about going international. This is actually a quote that I have from a friend of mine who's a venture capital investor in America. As you probably know, as some of you know, a lot of IT businesses are trying to go to the US market because there's a lot of capital there. There's a very big market, early adoption market in the United States. And the hard thing about it is that it's not easy because you have to be as good as the locals and better in something, right? So you have to be either cheaper or faster or higher quality, or you just have to work harder. And that's very hard when you're going to a more developed market, right? So for you guys, I've spoken to a number of you today, yesterday. Your next market after Moldova is often a Western country. Many of you are thinking about Romania, many of you are thinking about Western Europe, some of you are thinking about Russia. Those markets in general are more developed, larger, better financed, more expensive. So when you go there, you actually need to outperform the locals, because for almost every business that you're in, there is a competitor on that local market, right? So you have to be better than them. And that's kind of the idea. You have to be, that's what we call it, X plus one. You have to be X, the same, plus more, right? That's kind of the main thing you have to keep in mind. You have to outperform whoever is on that market. Sometimes it's not that difficult, but usually it's a challenge. Now, in economic terms, it's very simple. You know, why does this make economic sense? You guys all know the supply and demand curves, right? This is like basic economics. Perfect competition is right here. This is where demand and supply meet. And if you're if you're importing for the country that you're going to, you can be cheaper or better if you go below that point, right? So people are used to paying this, but now they'll get the same service paying here, right? That this is what breaching of competition through, by being more competitive does. And the same thing as an export. Usually if you sell in Moldova, you'll get this price point, but if you start exporting, you'll get to another point, right? So going abroad, going to a foreign market, if the curves, the supply and demand curves are different, makes sense, right? So that's why you want to do it. I'm just showing you this so you actually know there's real science behind it. It's just not blah, blah. Now, you've decided to go abroad, right? This is a famous photo of the Romanian-Moldovan border crossing, right? You're at that point. You have to go beyond it. What are the things you have to do? There are a lot of things, right? Basically, becoming competitive in a foreign market is not easy. But let's look at a couple of things. Three basically simple best practices that you have to start developing and start internalizing if you want to go international. First of all is the ability to present, right? The ability to pitch your project, to explain to an investor, to a client, to a business partner, to a support organization like UNDP and many others that are active, why your business deserves attention, deserves money. It's pretty simple stuff. I know all of you are business people, so you're all used to doing sales, but being able to do that according to international standards, irrespective of whether you're going to Romania or some other country, that is a certain, usually next level of proficiency. The cool thing is that today we're going to have a lot of pitch training. So Vitaly will be doing a session in the afternoon, which is called Pitching Like a Boss. This is like the hardcore stuff. This is the full download on being able to pitch. You can learn exactly how your materials should look like, how you should physically present, how you should structure your story, and that's in the system of pitching your business. That's usually what happens once you get to a point where people already, you have an appointment, people want to listen to you, want to learn. But, the first and foremost thing is that you have to be able to grab someone's interest, right? So when you, for instance, you go to a trade fair, I know that many of you, after yesterday's explanation of financing options and the grants that you can get from this program, once it starts giving them in fall, many of you are thinking about using this money to go to a trade show somewhere abroad, right? Or to do some kind of business visit to another country to find new customers. It is crucially relevant if once you get to that trade show, there are thousands of people there, it's some German big mess or something. In those couple of days, you have to, filter through many people that you don't need and get to the people that you need, and you have very limited time. So that's when you're pitching your business, you should be able to start with a very short 2-minute pitch, right? This is, in our world, in the world of technology companies, this is one of the key skills, key characteristics that we're trying to teach people. How do you stand up in front of an audience and in 2 minutes give a crystal clear presentation of what you're doing? We're going to talk more about this in my workshop this afternoon, so we'll do a little interactive session. We'll be all pitching our own businesses, and we'll look at how we understand it. But basically, the very simple way of doing it is trying to do it in 30 seconds. And we'll do this afternoon just to give you kind of a short idea of how it looks like. This is a framework that has been developed by a school of entrepreneurship at Silicon Valley, Founder Institute. It's a framework that if you fill it in and you practice it, you can pitch your company in 30 seconds to, like from the movie Philadelphia, with Denzel Washington, explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old, right? Someone who knows nothing about your business, someone who absolutely doesn't understand where you're coming from, what your product is. In 30 seconds, they still have to be able to understand what you're doing. And I know that many of you may find this simplistic because you have businesses, you know them very well. This looks like very simple stuff, but in reality, the first contact is everything, right? And if you can't, in 30 seconds, explain to someone, very simple, this is what I do, this is what's happening, you lose their interest, and it's much harder to regain it, even if those people actually understand your business. Because there are so many, once again, if you're going to a trade conference somewhere abroad, there are so many people there, right? And there's only very limited time, very limited attention that you can get from them. So this is a framework that works very well. You basically say, my company, name of company, is developing or is delivering a product, physical product, a website, a consultancy service, a bunch of workshops, whatever it is that you guys sell, to help a defined audience, right? We were already talking about it before. Who is the customer? What is the problem, right? To solve a problem, right? So if I do this for my own company, it's very simple. My company, CCC Startups, is developing a series of consultancy and investment products to help early stage technology startups from Middle East and Eastern Europe to get global traction with their business. And we do this through a platform of experts that we connect to those companies, right? This is the whole story. So like in one sentence, if you listen, I have explained to you what I'm doing. And each one of you should be able to do this. This afternoon we'll be doing this more in my workshop. Now, if you are able to do this and you get a meeting, then you go and you have to do a full presentation of your company. Normally you usually get like 20 minutes, half an hour. In Europe, sometimes an hour. In Europe, normally when you get a meeting, it's usually an hour. In America, it's less. And in that half an hour or an hour, that's when you do a full story. If you visit Vitaly's workshop, I know you got to choose, or maybe they'll choose for you. You can learn more about how to structure the whole pitch that you have to deliver in 20 minutes. Now, that's one story, right? So being able to pitch, being able to explain what you're doing. Second thing is knowing your numbers. The ability to fully understand where your customers are coming from, why are they paying, how much are they paying, how many of them are falling off, why they are falling off. That is a crucial understanding if you're going to a foreign market, right? Because the numbers are the equalizer. They're an objective, a level of objectiveness that doesn't matter whether you're in Moldova or in another country. These numbers have to make sense, because why are you going to that other market otherwise, right? Now, when you go to a new market, it basically always means new channels, right? Even if you know exactly how your service is bought, sold, paid for in your country, when you go to a new country, it will be different, right? There's going to be a different retail system, there is different online marketing, there's a different currency, everything works in a different way. That's actually the problem of Europe, right? When we look from a global international point of view, when companies are trying to enter European markets, the hard thing about Europe is that, according to the European Commission, we're European Union, let's include Moldova for that sake in it. It will become a member one day anyways. The European Union is the largest community of wealthy people in the world, right? That's the official statement of the European Commission. Problem is that we're very fragmented, right? So we have countries like Germany, like France, like United Kingdom, like Netherlands. Netherlands, I've lived there for many years and I had a business there. And once my company started becoming big in Holland and we started getting recognized, started getting easy to get customers, the first thing that we and our investors wanted to do is, okay, let's go abroad. In Germany, they don't have this, right? Germany is right next door to Holland. It's a very big country, much bigger than the Netherlands, much larger as a market. When we started looking into it, so I was at this very same stage where we're at today. I was trying to go abroad with an existing business. We started realizing that in Germany, everything works differently, right? Legal services are consumed differently. People find lawyers in a different way. People pay for lawyers differently. People use lawyers for different things, right? So, for instance, in my case, we weren't able to go to Germany because it didn't make any sense for us. We would be spending too much effort trying to break into a market that was very different and very hard. We would have to open offices there, get a German partner who is obviously fluent in German, which we aren't. So it's hard, right? So every time you go to a foreign market, it's a new channel. It's a new channel of getting the business and processing it. Now, if we look at the numbers, what it means first and foremost is that it's new marketing, right? Marketing works completely different in every country. You have similar channels, right? In every country, there's outdoor advertising, there is, person-to-person sales, there is online conversion, right? Websites that bring customers and give you business. But these channels work in different ways and the numbers are very different in every country, right? One way of figuring this out, for instance, for those of you that have any affinity with online advertising, you probably know that in search engines you can pay for getting listed, right? Systems like AdWords, etc. with Google. The prices for the keywords are always very different. So like in most countries, real estate is some of the most expensive online keywords, right? So if you want like to advertise mortgages or real estate, those are or financial services, those are like the expensive keywords, but they're expensive in many different ways in different countries. So it's very different country by country. One very simple way to understand this are conversion metrics, right? And this is something that is very, very popular in startups, but it works just as well for businesses that are offline, businesses that are not technological. It's a framework that we call the Startup Pirate metric. You can just call it the Pirate metric. We call it the Pirate metric because the words of the stages, they form the word R, the letters that they start with. And R is maybe some of you know if you've seen pirate movies, it's the way pirates say hello, right? They say R. This is how it looks like. You basically analyze the traffic that you get and the business that you get through a set of stages, right? You acquire a customer, they start actually using your product and paying for it. Now with offline products, that's a bit different, we'll come to it. They come back, so they order again, that's an important stage. They pay money, right? So you count that against the amount of people that are interested in your business. And finally, they send you their friends, right? The word of mouth. This is the classical marketing channel, the best one that has worked for centuries and centuries, right? Happy customers bring you more happy customers. Cool thing is that you can measure that. You can easily measure that. And of course, if you have an online business, it's technically easier to do it, but if you have an offline business, you still have to do it. And the reason we're talking about this is that if you measure your marketing, if you measure the conversion of customers, the way they find your business, stay customers, bring other customers, pay more, etc., 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 you can understand, and very easily once you go to a foreign market, you can look at each stage of this process and understand, okay, for that I need this, for this I need that, this is not working, that's working better than expected. And you need to do this, right? This is a classical conversion funnel for online businesses, right? So if this is a website or a mobile application, it's pretty simple, but we can take a look at how it works for offline as well. In the beginning, you have 100%, this is this column, 100% of people, right? So the total people that come to your website, right? People visit the website, and then it goes all the way down to the people that actually pay money, 2%, and people that bring in other customers, which is 1%, right? And you can value the customer based on the price of your product on that percentage. So they visit your website. The next step is they don't immediately click away. That's already the next step in the conversion funnel, a certain percentage. Then after they visited, they come again. They register, they make an account, or they supply for the newsletter. Then they actually start using the services. And as you know, probably in websites, very often in the beginning it's free, and then once people start coming back where they want more, like I don't know what is a good example, music services, or maybe when you have those mobile applications where you can switch off the advertisements, right? You probably all know that. When people are happy, they want to use the product better and more, they'll start paying money. And once they start paying money, you see how much money they're bringing in. You can actually put a price on the acquisition of the customer, right? So to get the people into that first stage, you need to advertise, right? You need to spend money on marketing. By seeing how much people that brings in and how many of those people end up paying, you can calculate, it's not a complicated calculation, how much the cost of the customer is. And by putting the cost of getting the customer against the value of the customer, so how much they will pay in 1 year. In most offline businesses, you usually put a 1-year value on a customer. In some businesses, you can do that for more or less time. You can calculate if the marketing channel makes sense, right? So this is very basic math. You can read a lot of books and study it much, much further, but this is the basic framework that actually every business has to understand. So if those numbers, if this system doesn't really make sense for your business, it's a good maybe exercise before you start going to a foreign market to understand this, because once you're in a foreign market, competing with more sophisticated competitors, with larger companies in the same field, it's much easier to succeed if you actually know how the conversion metrics of your business work. We're talking about websites, but of course it's the same for offline businesses, right? So imagine you have a store that is selling, I don't know, you guys are doing shoes, for instance, you told me about that. It's the same thing. How many people look into your store without buying? That's, let's say, that 100%. So you got someone physically to come into your store, right? How many people spend more than 5 or 10 minutes looking, like physically picking up the products, looking at them, maybe trying a shoe, right? But still not buying. That's the next stage. Then someone is actually buying, and then they're coming back, and then they're bringing their friends. They're talking about it on Facebook. They're happy with the shoes. These are all the same stages, right? It doesn't really matter whether it's online or offline, it's business. People find your business, become customers, become happy customers, bring more customers. This is the essence of every single business. Now, you don't have to be a marketer. Not everyone is a marketer. Good thing to understand about marketing is that there is a lot of people right now, as you know, also in Moldova, marketing is one of the hot things, right? So I visited, last time when I was here, I visited the Technical University of Moldova, and they were telling me also that at UTM, right now marketing is like the most desired faculty, right? They have like a school of marketing or something. So everyone wants to study marketing because that's where the cool jobs are, that's where people either get paid better as well. A lot of the times marketing is not seen as a full concept, right? So in the end of the day, marketing has to be about this, about the numbers that we talked about, right? A real marketer has to be able to analyze that funnel and explain to you if you have to spend so much to get so many people and so many % of them will become customers. And someone who does marketing should be able to analyze those numbers. Very often people that do marketing, they'll just write posts for you on Facebook, or they will come up with some cool idea how to advertise something on the streets. But in reality, a marketer is someone who needs to do much more. There was a question about this yesterday, whether a brand, right? Someone asked us whether a brand is innovation. And we talked about the fact that innovation is much more than the brand. The brand is one of the 10 things that makes up innovation. It's the same with marketing, right? If you have someone who designed a cool brand for you or a cool logo, well, that's actually a designer, not even marketing, but someone who came up with an idea of how to present your business, that's only a very small part of the marketing. The real marketing is the ability to understand the business process and to calculate and optimize the conversion between the different steps. So you don't have to be one, but it's very good to get one, especially right now when the market is flooded with marketing people. Now, many of them, of course, are not extremely experienced, but it's still a good idea to get one, or at least start consulting with one maybe before hiring them if you want to go abroad. Now, many of you will, of course, say, listen, my business is really far away from all that stuff, right? We're in, someone had a food processing business, agricultural business, clothing retail. We're not all this, cool online stuff. We don't really need to do this stuff, where this is maybe not so relevant for us. Thing is, this is the interesting thing of the times that we live in. The internet and software in general are eating the world, right? This is a very famous expression by one of the best investors in the United States, Mark Andreessen. If you guys remember the beginning of the internet in the 90s, there was this browser called Netscape. If some of you used it. He was one of the founders of Netscape, right? So he was one of the first people to build a big business out on the internet in the mid-90s. And by now, this is already 15 years ago, or no, 20 years ago. He's now one of the leading investors, one of the most successful, insightful people in the technology investment industry. And he has this very simple quote, which is very powerful because it's very true. And it's when you can explain something big in a few words, it makes a lot of sense. Software is eating the world, right? There are all these businesses that were offline, or in markets like Moldova still are overwhelmingly offline. But within a couple of years, these businesses will be online businesses, and they will be eaten by online businesses that do it better than their offline competitors, right? So for instance, you guys are doing shoes. 10 years from now, probably one of those big online shoe stores like Zappos or Lazada or Zalando or whoever is big in Europe will come in and eat your market. So you have to innovate, right? We go back to the question, why do you have to innovate? Because you have to compete with this innovation that is coming from abroad. So online technologies, they're actually online marketing technologies, the way of thinking about a business as an online business is also very relevant for offline businesses if you want to stay competitive. This is, if we go back to the need for doing internet style or online style marketing for offline businesses, this is a very good example of why you have to do it. There are companies in Europe, Rocket Internet, some of you may know it, that have basically eaten whole industries by doing better online marketing, better online sales than their offline competitors, right? Some of the biggest shoe stores, food delivery businesses, clothing stores, etc., in Europe today are owned by an internet company in Germany called Rocket Internet. And there are a couple of other ones that are also competing with them, right? So 10 years ago, something would be a simple offline business, a store, maybe if they're doing well, a chain of 10, 20, 30 physical stores. Today it's a website, right? And they're using internet marketing to get those customers, right? They go to a new country and immediately start marketing, right? If you think about it this way, you guys want to go abroad, right? Imagine you're selling, again, shoes or food or whatever. If in the neighboring country, Romania, right, people go online looking in Romanian for that product, and the first thing they see in Google is the name of your company and a link to the website of your online store where they can pay with a credit card or whichever other way, you can sell to those people, right? This is your internationalization. You don't even have to, well, in most cases you need to have a company in that country, etc., but theoretically, you don't even physically need to be there, because if people are looking for your product and they're finding you, that means business, right? So this is why internet marketing and marketing in general is very, very important. Another way to think about it is this. This is the world that we live in today, right? The largest taxi company in the world doesn't have cars. It's Uber, right? The world's biggest media company doesn't create any content. The most valuable online store doesn't have inventory, Alibaba. And the largest provider of accommodation in the world, Airbnb, doesn't own a single piece of real estate, except their office maybe, right? So increasingly, as the years go by, the coming next years, this will become a reality, right? So you will see companies in Moldova, like for instance Uber, I bet that within a year or two they'll be in Moldova. They're already in Bucharest, they're already in Sofia, they're in Moscow already. They will come to Chisinau as well, right? So maybe in a year from now when I'm back in Chisinau, I need a ride from the airport to my hotel, I will call this American company called Uber, and I'll tap on the car, and there's this very nice local guy from Chisinau who will come and pick me up, and he knows my name, and I'm going to pay by card, right? So if you have a taxi business, this is your real threat, right? And this is the real globalization, the real internationalization. So you can do the same thing. That's the good news, the very good news. So we did this already. Now, if you're of online channels, how do you keep track of your numbers? I already told you it's best to get a marketer or at least consult with someone who understands this. For online conversion, for online businesses, there is a massive amount of tools, a massive amount of technologies, products that help you understand your online conversion, measure visits to your website, track who's coming again, track how people are spending money, etc., etc., etc. But if your business is fully offline, right? Some of you guys have consulting businesses or the clothing businesses, you can still do this, right? There's like really good tools and frameworks to use. Like for instance, something that we use a lot in our business is a company called Pipedrive. Right now, it's one of the leading sales CRM solutions. CRM is customer resource management. It's a tool that allows you to put all your customers in buckets and track, put tasks, follow up tasks, call again, email again, visit the customer, etc., and measure how your customer is progressing through these conversion steps that we mentioned, right? So from a suspect, from someone who maybe one day become a customer, all the way to someone who's bringing in money and becoming a recurring customer. Even if it's an offline business, there is a really cool tool that you can use to keep track, and you immediately see who is where, what is happening, who's converting, who's not converting. You can of course do this on a piece of paper and an Excel sheet if you want, but it's much easier and much quicker to use those kind of tools. So Pipedrive is one of them. There are many other CRMs. There is the old ones, like Sugar CRM or Sol 360, many different tools. It's better to start using them even if you have an offline business, because it increases your understanding of the numbers of your company. Always be measuring. That's in the end what it's all about, right? When you want to go to a foreign market, you have to understand the numbers. So whatever is happening in your business, you have to measure it and optimize that conversion. That's the key to success. Now, we talked about pitching. We talked about numbers and measuring and marketing. Let's talk about building networks briefly. This is, the famous 6 degrees of separation photo, right? There's this theory, it's probably true, that from you to any other person in the world, there are 6 people in between, right? 6 people that know each other, that can connect, right? So Obama is a famous example because I think either he used that as a reference or some people use that, relating to him. Between you and President Obama, there are 6 people that all know each other, right? You know someone, that person knows someone, that person knows someone, and that person probably knows the President of the US. It's most probably true. So it's all about building those networks, right? There is this expression, it's an old school expression, I think one of those large tycoons of the United States once used it, that, you know, whatever deals are made, whatever business is made, it's made through a phone call, right? So any multi-billion-dollar gazillion deal, or those guys that stole $1 billion from your country, for instance, that was a deal that was made over the phone, right? Someone called someone, a deal was made. So the question is, not how do you do it, but who do you know, right? You have to call the right people, right? This is what it's all about. In the end of the day, this is the key understanding. You need to figure out who are the people that are going to give you the business that you need. So it's not about what you know, or ideas, it's about who you know. First, very simple rule of building networks. This is very simple and yet very, very powerful, is that human relationships, and interestingly enough, technology has not been able to change this, or at least significantly change this yet. Human relationships are built over time, right? If you put a, time and performance kind of simple graph, or a time and space actually, if you think about it, you meet someone for the first time. Many of you today or yesterday are meeting for the first time, most of you, right? So, but this is the first time we meet. What I think about you, or what do you think about me? Well, some people like each other immediately, some people dislike each other, some people think that someone is stupid. It doesn't matter. To be honest, the first impression of someone is very relative, right? We have time, we have space, and there's this one meeting, and it's right there. It doesn't give us any information, right? Just the first impression, but those are human defense mechanisms, right? So that we know, okay, I want to speak to that person, no, I don't want to see him again. In reality, relationships, business relationships are built over time, right? So what happens is that when you meet someone the second or the third time, you put more dots on this system of coordinates, right? And very simply, very bluntly put, if the line is going up and to the right, so it's progressing the right way, that is a relationship that you can build on, right? Any relationship that we all have, personal relationships, friendships, business relationships, they're all like this, right? If they're good, they're going up. If they're bad, some of these friends that you have that used to be good friends and then suddenly they start doing stupid things, they're not friends anymore, shit happens, the relationship is going down, right? So any relationship, any business relationship, it's the same thing, right? I'm saying this because I've noticed many times when we talk about, going to a foreign market, selling in a new country, there is very often this idea, especially when people aren't very experienced, is that okay, we're gonna get this grant, right, from this program. We're gonna go abroad. We're gonna spend those $8,000 or euros on going to a trade show in Germany, and we have these 3 days, and we need to win business from these people because that's our window. In reality, you actually need more. That's why, the number one rule of project management is that, plan for resources and then double, right? You plan certain time, plan certain amount of money, double it just in case because you will need that extra reserve. When you go abroad for 3 days and you meet 100 suspects for your business, you will have to follow up again. You will have to meet them again, talk to them again in order to get that business. This is how it realistically happens. Sometimes you get lucky, but usually it takes time. So, as simplistic as this is a very good place to start when building relationships. Every contact point is one dot only. You have to make as many dots as you can, which means communicating, following up. Following up is a thing that is a problem in Eastern Europe. People aren't very good at following up, at least to Western standards. So if you met someone, this thing where every week you would pick up the phone, call them again, write them an email, ask them how they are, congratulate them with their birthday. That's why you have a CRM, you know what their birthday is. Congratulate them with their national holiday. Most countries have like one every month. There is all these reasons where you can call people, email people, and that's how in the end of the day, if they have all these providers, your competitors that are pitching to them, if you do this, they'll likely give you the business because you're simply a nice person to them, right? So follow-up is very, very important. Now, when you go to a foreign market, the kind of people you need to meet are, a couple of simple groups. They're investors, they're distributors, competitors, your future personnel, like this marketing person that I was talking about, service providers that you need locally, like lawyers, like bankers, et cetera, right? So how do you go about it? How do you meet them? I have a bunch of slides on the rules of etiquette. I'll go through it very quickly. These are a couple of slides that were made for Korean businesses that want to go to America. It's a funny kind of set of rules, which may sound very normal to us, but once again, when people are from a different culture, it seems different to them, right? So when you, for instance, meet a first time, this is all very simple stuff, really. You shake hands, you keep it polite, and you follow up, very important, by email. You add someone on LinkedIn. Facebook, I know that in Europe it's kind of normal to add people that you haven't really met or you don't really know. In America this is not considered normal, but you can, depending on, I know that in Ukraine everyone that has a Facebook account is connected to everyone else who has a Facebook account. So there it's kind of normal, we find it strange. Then you get into a conversation with someone. Keep it polite, keep it simple, follow up, answer questions. Now, once again, this may sound as super simple stuff, but in reality, this is where it often goes wrong, right? If someone leaves a bad impression on someone, they're not going to get the business. This is all about optimizing the chances, the opportunities of getting a business. Don't interrupt people when they talk. Use polite words like "excuse me." Writing skills. This is, by the way, very important. This is where it very, very often goes wrong. Writing has to be perfect in any foreign language, right? So very often, if you cannot write, proficiently enough in a foreign language, get someone who can, right? If you guys, for instance, will be doing business with Germany or with, English-speaking countries, if you write an email with mistakes in it, it severely decreases your chances of getting that deal because that's what people don't like, right? It's simple stuff, but it's very crucial. So if you need to write a proposal in German or in English or in French or in Russian, if you're not that fluent in Russian, get someone who speaks that language. You can go to the university here, get a student, pay them, I don't know how much, not much, and get them to write you a letter, right? Just super simple stuff, very effective in optimizing your chances of getting a deal. Keep promises, be on time. Once again, a problem in some Eastern European countries. Usually the more west you go, starting with Western Europe and definitely in the United States, you cannot be late, right? You can be 5 minutes early or late. If you're 15 minutes late, well, in America, people would just not give you the meeting at all. They say, sorry, you're late. In Europe, people would usually let you in, but they'll be hesitant. They'll have this bad feeling about you. Someone who cannot keep promises, right? The difference, and I know this because I've lived both in the US and in Western Europe and in Eastern Europe, the difference between countries like here and countries in the West is that the markets are so much bigger that people have much more choice and are much more pretentious when it comes to choosing whom to do business with, right? In places like Moldova, I know this from Bulgaria as well. Look, how many of us are there? Like in Sofia, I always have the feeling that it's like 200 or 300 people that decide everything in the country. That own the businesses, that are in politics, that are in the banks. A couple of hundred people. We all know each other. So what if I'm late, right? We all know each other. I was drinking with your wife yesterday. The other night we were at a wedding all together. Well, we'll see each other next week again. What does it matter, right? That's how it works, right? I'm sure it's like that in Moldova as well. It's a small country. Everyone knows each other. When you go to a large foreign market like Germany or UK, that doesn't work there, okay? If you're late, people are like, listen, I have 1,000 other people that I can meet in the same time, and I don't want to do business with you. And you might be offended because like, so what, right? But it does matter. It's very important. So don't be late. It's one of the things that really kills stuff. Follow up, it's all the same stuff. After meetings, follow up, keep it polite, keep it short. Avoid certain things, right? Never talk about religion or politics. Those two things are prohibited in any business conversation. Also sexual orientation, who's gay, who's not, you never talk about that stuff. Like that kills business deals before they even start. Sounds like total common sense, but believe me, this very often goes wrong. Just be polite with people. Dress up, be on time, don't gossip, don't eavesdrop, which means listening to other people's conversations. Never look at your phone during meetings. I do that myself. That's a bad thing that I do sometimes. Like I get bored and I look at my phone. You can get an Apple Watch like Vitaly has, then you can do it without people noticing it, but best thing is not to do it, right? Now, this is a very, very simple way of going about contacts. This is something that I always instruct startups to do. In our industry, in the startup industry, it's maybe a bit more, I wouldn't say easier, it's a bit more straightforward. What always happens is that, when we work with startups, I even had it with one of you guys yesterday, people walk up to you and they say, can you please help me with finding investors? Can you introduce me to someone? Can you give me a contact because I know you have so many contacts, right? The way to go about it, because in the end of the day, you always need contacts. For every industry, and it doesn't matter what your business is doing, the way to start is, before going to this foreign country, make a simple Excel spreadsheet, a list, you can do it on paper as well if you want, with the people that you need to meet, right? So you're going, like every one of you has a specific idea of what market you want to go to and what services or products you will sell there, right? So who are the people that you need to meet, right? It's like the known unknown, as they call it, right? It's much easier to deal with information once you actually know what you're missing. So if you populate that list with 30, let's say, names, Like, I can give you an example. When we look at startups, and people ask me, okay, who should I go to for investments, or who should I go to for, for business support? The answer is usually very obvious. I always ask, okay, who has done the same thing as you're doing in a different market, right? And in online businesses, it's all about competition. If you're the only one doing it, you're usually wrong. Now, in your business, that might be different, although I'm not sure, right? So if you guys, like, for instance, are going to a foreign country, the question always is, okay, who are the investors there? It's limited. It's not everyone, right? It's a limited number of organizations and people. Who are the distributors? Who are the retail chains? Who are the support groups, the consultants, etc.? That everything's a limited number of people, and you have to research it because then you know who you need to know, right? You put that in a list, and then you start analyzing that list. You start looking, okay, this person I can best approach like this. Now, the reason I put the LinkedIn logo there, and I'm sure that for many of you, LinkedIn is a relevant resource as well. It's a professional social network, the largest in the world, right? So once you look on LinkedIn, you can actually see who do you know. You'll be surprised. Like a lot of you, in many cases, you will be second or third, or maybe even first, with actually the right person that you need to know in that country, right? So you can ask that person for an introduction, right? The person that is in between. I use this all the time. It's very, very useful. So once again, a very simple hack. Make a list of the people you need to meet and then start figuring out how you can meet them. Once again, in online businesses, it's maybe a bit easier in the sense that you basically look at the competitors and then you go like, okay, who invested in them? What are these people now? What are they doing? Are they investing? Are they, creating a new company? And you create this whole map, this social map of businesses. You can do that also in your business. The best place to start looking for contacts, and I think we're almost finished now, the best place to start looking for contacts are embassies and organizations related to them. This, I think, is one of those under kind of lighted secrets. I've seen this in Bulgaria. Almost every EU embassy, and especially the ones like Norway who are paying for this, or Sweden, who are very active, SIDA here in Chisinau, they all have many, many support programs, right? So even if you don't participate in this workshop or in this kind of system that is now coming with more trainings and funding, etc., if you have a very clear idea of what you want to sell and which countries you want to go to, try to meet their economic development officers from their embassies. They're very open. All these embassies, they constantly have open days, open meetings. I know for a fact that the Swedish embassy in Chisinau, I visited them, does that. The Norwegian embassy in Chisinau does that. The British embassy in Chisinau does that. The Dutch embassy in Chisinau does that. I know all these organizations and I know they do it. Probably most others as well. USAID is very active here. USAID is doing the economic development part on behalf of the US embassy. If you want to go to those markets, the best way is to meet these economic development officers because these people are actually getting paid by their governments to help you get on their market and to also help their companies to come on this market, right? So try to meet them. Many of them have like very small but very effective support programs. They can give you some money to go visit their country and meet some people there. They have, sometimes like the Dutch government has funds to put, to have like an experienced person from Holland come here and consult you for free for you on how to expand your business in Holland, right? These are all very small programs. They don't really advertise them or you can't read about it in the newspapers, but almost every European embassy has these programs. So once you know which country you want to go to, one of the best ways here in Chisinau is to actually visit the embassy and start learning about what they can do. And of course, once you meet those people, you put them on that list of people and through them, you meet the next ones, right? It all goes back to this thing that I told in the beginning. It's X+1. You have to be as good as the others, but work harder, work smarter. That's what it's all about. And finally, as with any process, going abroad, going to a new market, it all looks like this, but in reality, you'll still get there. You'll just have to make a lot of detours and be very creative. And that's where everyone fails, right? So everyone who doesn't, who fails, who goes bankrupt, it all happens right here. One of those crazy turns, they miss them, they speed, they run out of fuel or money. That's what you have to avoid. So it's all a straight line up. With that, thank you very much. Thank you. Questions? So we still have some time. I was pretty quick. It's either all absolutely clear or everyone is like, what the hell? What was that? Nothing? It's okay for everyone? see, if this program continues and I come again, I expect everyone to do this, right? I expect everyone to have lists of people they need to meet, the people that they follow up with, and be on time, right? And write correct English or Russian or whatever emails. So if you're not asking questions, I expect everyone to be able to do this. Okay. Yep.
I
Sure.
can ask you, because we have some time more. Can you explain us maybe how much the average startup in the States have to pay these marketing experts? How much?
Oh, the marketing expert? I mean, it really depends on the market, right?
I mean this visibility on the internet and how these things are done.
You know, it's hard to put a number on it. It really relates on who you know, right? So who you know, how you know it. So, for instance, when we talk about conferences, conferences are a big business. There are many, international trade and startup conferences or business conferences. Usually, to go to a business conference, it costs a lot of money, right? You have to pay for a booth or for a ticket. You have to obviously pay for your travel and hotel, etc. Very often, like in our business, and I'm sure it's the same everywhere else, if you know the organizers, you'll get a free ticket. Like, for instance, I personally have never paid for a conference ever myself. And that was before I started speaking at them as a speaker, because then they obviously don't charge you. But also, like, going to conferences, I just don't pay for that. I just rely on friends, right? So this is, this goes back to this. If you, for instance, become friends with the people that run some kind of, foreign development organization or a trade organization in your field, you'll get invited for free to a conference, that other people have to pay maybe €1,000 to go to or something, right? So putting a cost on doing foreign business development is hard, but usually the smart thing to do is to just pay for travel. That's it, and then everything else is your network. Everything else is contacts. Now, if you mean by employing people, obviously the cost of consultancy or salary is different in different countries. In America, if you want to have a good internet marketer, let's say someone who has Silicon Valley experience, someone who has built big online businesses, that can be very expensive. That can cost $150,000, $200,000 a year, right? So that's very expensive. But you can start much smaller. Like, many of you don't have to go to America at all. Like, I'm pretty sure almost no one does. If you're, like, once again, realistically thinking about going to a market like Romania, which is relevant for many of you, or maybe Russia, or maybe Ukraine, or maybe Germany, just get someone who's, like, good in this kind of, conversion math stuff. It's not that hard. And someone with a marketing degree should be able to do this. If they can't, it's a bad degree, right? It's a bad program. So someone who's if just to give a very specific example, if this was my company, right, I would have, like, let's say, a clothing company in Moldova, and I want to go to Germany, I would try to find someone who's Moldovan, who lives in Germany, and is doing marketing, right? So someone you can employ, because you can get easy access to them, someone who has experience in that market and speaks the local language. And then I would basically interview them. I would ask them, what have you done before? Show me your previous projects. Which company did you help? How much did you help them? How much better did they get? And if you like what they hear, you can actually pay that person a normal salary. Whatever. If they're in Moldova, it's obviously going to be less than if they're in Germany, but it's going to be worth your money, right? That's what it's all about. It doesn't matter how expensive it is. It matters how much you make by using that service, right? So just be very, very specific about who you ask for help.
Here we go.
Yep.
It's all very well about the numbers. So, in order to do a normal analysis, I need to know what my competitors do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, simplest thing, I want to compete with, I don't know, as a supplier for H&M, yeah?
Right.
Clothing. So, how the heck do I know for how much H&M buys it? Because it's not,
yeah, it's not public, right? They don't publish that information.
Exactly.
Right.
So I can hire 50 marketeers, spies, whatever. I still don't have a chance in hell to know how. Because, for example, I can go from $5 a unit to $50 a unit.
Right.
So how do I go to H&M and say, okay, look, this is what I can offer? Because
Yeah.
I have two risks here. One, I'm either too expensive, so they say, okay, nice, bye-bye. Or second, I'm too cheap.
Right.
And then they say, okay, come here, and later on I don't have any chance to increase my price because they say, okay, look at your offer.
Yeah, I mean, it's there is no. Yeah, I know what you mean. There is no.
Against this, because normally our products are all against the big ones, like I don't know, H&M, Siemens, whatever.
Yeah.
So how do we?
It's not easy, right? So there's no magic pill for this. I mean, the normal way to do it would be to obviously say, go to such a large, very large counterparty customer and say, okay, so this is what I'm doing, and they're like, yeah, we already have a company in Moldova that supplies us this, and they're like, how much are you paying them? They're like, well, it's like, okay, I'll pay 20% less whatever they're paying. Now you can burn yourself. That's the risk of doing business, but I mean, you obviously don't have to sign anything before the numbers are known, right? So if it really does make sense, you just don't take that customer. But it's hard. One of the best things, like, the more, how should I put it, the less innovative a business is, so the more old school it is, the more inside information there is, right? So what you're talking about, this is all inside information. Usually the only way to find out is to have very good intelligence in that market, right? So if you have people, like if you have it sounds dirty, but that's the way business is done. Like if that Moldovan competitor of yours, right, that already has a deal with H&M, well, take his secretary to dinner and find out, right? Hire someone away from that company, like find the information that you need to find. It's hustling.
Usually, for example, in Moldova, you can do, I don't know, you can go to a country and say, we do nice wines, we sell weapons. And everybody says, yeah, okay, Moldova is, let's say, semi-known for this product, it's okay. The moment you go with a high-tech product, I don't know, an application, electronics or something, everybody says, what?
Yeah.
Where? Who? So how do you overcome this?
That's a good question.
Normally, like with the crisis now and so on, normally people look for a niche product,
right,
but they're very afraid to buy something out of Moldova. So how do you make your first pitch? So how do you interest them so you get second, third, etc. meeting with him, and then
Right. This is a very good question, and this is one of the it's actually one of the things that I want to talk about in my second session this afternoon. One of the largest things about internationalization is also about presenting yourself in that kind of way. Now, what happens a lot with technology companies is that this is a well-known problem, right? A lot of startups based in Ukraine also don't want to advertise that they're from Ukraine because they're afraid people don't want to do business with them if they're from a country like Ukraine or Moldova. So very often on websites, like people would just register, an address, a post office address somewhere abroad in Germany or in UK or in America, and on the website you wouldn't even see that this company is actually physically based in Ukraine. So that's one way of doing it, registering a legal entity somewhere else, right? This actually works. The next stage would be to hire someone. Of course, if you already are more advanced and you have a business and it's running and you really want to get in that market. Not just hiring a marketer, as I already was telling you guys, but the next level, hiring let's say a CEO or a director of sales or business development that is experienced in that market. Most technology companies, most startup companies that become big and come from, let's say, Europe and go big on the US market, they always end up employing an experienced business executive from this market because you cannot learn that yourself. You need someone with that experience, with the connections, etc. So that's what you do at the next level, but in the beginning, just create a legal entity. It costs you, like in the UK, it's like 200 euros or something, or pounds to open an entity. It's really cheap. It's really cheap. You can do this like in the US. It's even cheaper than that. It's
2,000 pounds a year.
That's if you do the accountancy. There are cheaper ways of doing it. Like believe me. But okay, fine. If you're going to be like doing business through that entity, it's going to cost more. But hey, if that's the cost you got to pay to get the big business, it's once again analyze it. Yeah, but before you even do a legal entity, just create you can go to like an office park. You can do this online and rent a postal address for 10 euros or something. Do that. Put that on your website. You physically have an address there. The fact that the ending of your company is the Moldovan SRL or something, right? People won't figure out that you're in Moldova actually. So.
You told us about months.
Yeah.
You told us about your experience to hire somebody from the local market in your business. Can you share your experience about that thing? How did you find a good person? How did you hire them? How did you interest them? And the things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I have several times in my life hired people in countries that I don't live in and have no experience in. There are a couple of tricks, right? The most important thing, and this is something that a lot of experienced managers will tell you is that you don't hire on skills, but you hire on personality, right? So whatever the CV says is much less important than your feeling about that person. And from that point of view, what is very important are references, right? References usually say much more about a person than a CV, right? So I would personally never hire someone if I don't get a couple of good references. Sometimes you can go wrong, it happens. Like people would reference someone who isn't that very good, but that happens. But generally, getting a reference, and like, by the way, when you're checking a reference, and this is something I learned recently, very useful is to ask, you know how it goes, right? If you ask for a reference, they will call their friends or their parents or their former bosses if they're in a good relationship, and they will ask the person to write or say something very good about them, obviously, right? Because it's a reference. The trick always is to ask that person when you're doing a reference phone call, tell me something bad about the person, right? Because everyone has, tell me a weak side of the person, right? And if they cannot say that, then it's either really fucked up, it's like really bad, so that person is just, they're hiding something, or they don't really know that person. But an honest reference call should always tell you as well what are the weak sides, because everyone has them and it's fine to know them, it's good.
I would like to just complete the question. Can you tell me what do you do if you see the answer that you hear something bad about that person? Do you maybe sometimes the person is angry about losing that person from his company or something like this, and it's only a subjective opinion, so it can be like, you know.
I mean, you know, like personal relations are always complicated, right? So, I mean, sometimes you would get a weird reference from someone. It really depends, right? It's hard to say what you have to do in every specific case, but what usually works is getting like references. It doesn't matter if they're negative. Like some people, every one of us has had negative experiences, right? Every one of us has people that will give us a negative reference, right? And that's normal. That's okay. Everyone has them. It's good to get a couple, right? So when I interview a person, I would always I would have certain obvious questions like, how would you do this? Show me your previous work, even if it's an intern. Fine, they'll show you a university assignment. That's also something. Show me your previous work, and give me 3-4 customers or employers that I can call and ask for a reference, right? And that's usually a good thing to do. Now, I know that in most Eastern European countries, people are much more complicated about this, and in general, people don't like to show the dirty laundry, but if you want to go big, you have to do it. Yes?
Я правильно понял, парень, слышно?
Слышно, да.
Парень предыдущий спрашивал про то, что по Молдове технологическом плане никто не знает. А это он сказал, что Молдова...
Он спросил, да, как сделать так, чтобы за рубежом, если, чтобы было доверие к неизвестной стране, как Молдова, правильно?
Персональная дискуссия. Мы четвертый стран, которые имплементировали мобильную подпись, ни у кого такого нет. 4 страны в мире или 6. Мы одни из первых протестировали 4G вообще в мире. И мы очень много чего тестируем в нашей стране. Наша страна сейчас одна из самых популярных стран в мире, где тестируются самые новые технологии. По Fiber Optic, допустим, оптическое волокно, и по цене интернета вы не найдете ни одну страну в мире, в которой за 10 евро у вас будет 100 мегабит.
Вот вам рекламщик Молдовы, хороший.
Когда у нас есть дискуссия, это правда, не governance у нас на очень высоком уровне. У нас наши парни едут в Австрию, там различные страны европейские, показывают, как они у нас делали. И это работает, как бы не все идеально. Но есть пункты, которые на самом деле мы одни из первых. И заметьте, первое место в мире по количеству банкоматов на душу населения.
Ах, вот где миллиард, значит, понятно. В банкоматах. Okay. Gary. He's getting off topic now.
Подождите, кто 4G? Не наши же молдаване 4G сделали. Кто M-Sign сделал?
Это раньше сделал.
Телефона? Кто сделал e-фактуру? Это все наши люди сделали, наши программисты. У нас наше программное обеспечение половины Израиля используется.
Знаете, тут, если мы сейчас все-таки вернемся на ту дискуссию, которая была, это, конечно, да, у каждой страны есть что показать. Кстати, вот скорость интернета — это всегда интересная вещь, поскольку в маленьких странах Восточной Европы таки да, интернет один из самых быстрых в мире. Долгое время в Румынии был самый быстрый интернет после Южной Кореи в мире. Сейчас, может быть, не знаю, может быть, Молдова уже стала быстрее, но это...
Самый быстрый по цена, скорость.
Ну, понятно, да. Но это связано с инфраструктурой, да? То есть это происходит из-за того, что инфраструктура прокладывается новая именно для тестинга, А пользователей, поскольку денег мало у людей, пользователей не очень много, и поэтому она недоиспользована. Неважно, короче, это все вещи, которые, если вы выходите на новый рынок, то, конечно, можно послать красивую брошюру о Молдове, что вот у нас то, у нас все, у нас брынза вкусная, там все такое, вино хорошее. Но по-настоящему людям, особенно в развитых рынках, скажем, как Германия, особенно Штаты, они вообще ни о такой стране не слышали, и, конечно, их может это испугнуть. Так что в том смысле, тот ответ, который я дал, что в некоторых случаях имеет смысл как бы скрывать физическую страну нахождения и иметь юрлицо в третьей стране, имеет смысл. И как бы...
Но я имею в виду, как для начала разговора есть полный список для того, чтобы...
Это работа фактически вашего Министерства иностранных дел, таких организаций, как Etiquette, как посольство Молдовы за рубежом, рекламировать страну так, чтобы люди знали, как здесь хорошо и дешево, и все такое. Давайте последний вопрос, и я думаю, что пора заканчивать.
Допустим, компания собирается скейлинг-ап через 2-3 года. Что бы вы порекомендовали делать сейчас? Как подготовиться, ну, что, не знаю, какие-то типы делать сейчас, если планы в будущем?
Знаете, вот все то, что мы сегодня обсуждали, чем раньше это делать, тем лучше. Да? То есть, чем раньше вы поймете, кто ваши конкуренты в той стране. Вот мы утром за завтраком разговаривали о рынке игрушек. И вот если бы это был мой бизнес, я бы очень хотел понять, вот в той же Германии, да, где мы знаем, что большой рынок, большой спрос на дорогие деревянные игрушки. Кто их продает, кто они такие, какая у них себестоимость, какие у них каналы. Судя по всему, из нашего разговора вы знаете эти вещи. Вот если это все анализировать и искать, и дать себе время, чтобы найти правильный вход, то есть какой именно, вот где у них там ниша, которая не заполнена. Опять это все то же самое, да, то есть это понимание каналов сбыта, distribution channels, и понимание чисел, то есть сколько стоит на этот рынок выйти, какие на это затраты, какую можно сделать выгоду и так далее. То есть это все домашнее задание, которое чем раньше его готовить, тем, конечно же, лучше. Это тоже время, это ресурс, очень, очень дорогой, кстати. Окей, ладно, давайте, спасибо, я думаю, сейчас обед у нас, да?